Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks, and today we have a returning beloved guest. It's Ladee Danger.
Hello, I'm back for this.
Welcome back.
Yeah, wow, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
We're talking about your very favorite color, so we thought it was going to be, like, we couldn't have anybody else to come talk about how to play black.
Yeah, number one.
Yes, the greediest, the most opportunistic color, the spookiest, the ookiest.
The most flattering.
That too.
It looks good on everyone.
Slimming. It slims down the life total, certainly. We are going to be talking about the strengths and the weaknesses and the strategies that black is good at, and like the staples that support the black archetype in Commander. And we had to have Ladee to do it. But before we get into this episode, if you want to pick up any of the cards that you see in this episode, please do so and support the show by going to cardkingdom.com/command. It is a great way to support the show for completely free. You're Magic players. You're going to buy Magic cards. Shop from Card Kingdom, which has the professionalism and the huge inventory to get all of the cards that you're looking for in one cart. Plus, they'll ship them and package them super professionally, so when they show up on your doorstep, they're exactly the cards in exactly the condition that you ordered. There's nothing worse than ordering a sparkling new near mint card and it showing up bent because it got shoved into the wrong mailbox and wasn't properly packaged. So, we love Card Kingdom over here. We trust them for all of our gaming needs. You can support the show at cardkingdom.com/command. And once those cards are in your hand, you're going to need to protect them. Go to ultrapro.com/command to pick up all of the black accessories that you need to feed your warlock soul. ULTRAPRO has all of the Magic licensing, so they make official Magic products with official Magic art. If there's a card that you are in love with, go check ULTRAPRO. Make sure that you get the black sleeves and the black binder and the black deck box to match your cool mono black deck. ULTRAPRO has high quality Magic accessories that will make sure that your cards are safe and looking great. Again, support the show and support your cards at ultrapro.com/command. The final way to support us is directly at patreon.com/commandzone. All of our patrons get access to extra turns and game nights a day early. Plus, they get them without ads and get access to exclusive content like Turn Talk, which is after an extra turns game. We just sit down and talk about the game that just happened. You can check out the Turn Talk about the extra turns that Ladee and I just did for Halloween.
It was a fun game.
It was super fun. And we had a fun conversation after the game about what happened if we would have drawn one more card. If you were looking for that, like what was in Ladee's hand.
If you got one more land.
Yeah. And any point, you can find out all about that on Turn Talk by being a patron. Plus, we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode, and this one is dedicated to Brian Timlin. You rock, Brian.
You rock.
Thanks for supporting the show. All right. Let's get into it.
I'm ready.
How to play black. Before we get into like the actual
nitty gritty,
the specific cards, I want to talk about black as a concept in Magic, because I think in order to play a color really well and in order to deck build really well, you need to understand what each color is really good at and what each color struggles with, so you can shore up those weaknesses and really utilize the strengths when you're building and when you're playing.
Yeah.
And I think mono black is one of the trickier colors to play.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, because you're trading like non-mana resources for like cards or mana or something like that. So it's really hard to know like when it's safe to use your life total or when you should push that button and draw a bunch of cards, you know? It's tricky. And so let's talk about designing black first, because black is greedy and like demonic, and
it's the evil, if you will, of the color pie in its own very unique way.
Right. And we think of it often as evil, but I think they describe it a lot as like ambitious.
Yes.
Where it's like black seeks power just beyond anything. And often that leads like down a dark path, but that isn't necessarily like raw evil.
Yeah, no,
right?
it just simplifies it in the terms. Like
Right.
if you were to think white, good, black, evil. But I think I always use the example, if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, it's like making a pact with a warlock patron. You're like, I want this at all cost. I will do whatever it takes to get it. And like, you know, you kind of leave your conscience behind a little bit and you're like, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll sacrifice myself. I'll sacrifice this thing, or you know,
I'll pay life. I'll sacrifice bodies. I'll
ping them
like,
for, you know.
Yeah. And like it's like a real leech on that kind of thing where you're like, I'm willing to trade this for that.
Yeah.
And that's what black does. I think trading is like such a huge part of black, where it's like, I'm going to spend a little less mana, but I'm going to spend an extra card to do this, or I'm going to like spend a little extra life to do this.
It can be a little, I guess you're right. It can be a little complicated because it's not as straightforward as like playing green. You're like, I ramp, I play big thing, I go burr, you know?
More mana mean more big.
More big mean swing mean good. And black is just a little bit, I don't want to say convoluted because convoluted is not the word, because I think it's pretty straightforward, but it's just like being riskier, but not risky in the way of red, you know? So I don't know. I love it.
It's the thing that I wanted to mention about black before we get into it is like, this actually really should inform how you play black.
Yes.
Right? Because they're designing cards to be like black's power comes from trading one thing for another. And I think when you play black for the first time, you're like, oh, I don't want to sacrifice this thing. This is my thing.
Yeah.
But if you're playing black, especially mono black, pay the life, do the thing.
You have to.
That's it. Dive in.
It's the way it was made to play. So there are fun cards that come out that kind of like challenge the way that it instinctually you think you play black. But I mean, at its base level is you want that thing, you're going to need to trade or pay for it in some capacity. So I think some people might say that it's a little bit of a riskier play style, or that you have to like, I don't know, it's almost kind of like connivey and like, you know, ooh, I'm going to do something in the dark side.
Right.
And I definitely identify with that as a player. And I think a lot of people relate. And so
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about playing black? What's your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do is quite literally the thing. Like I think most people know I play Corvold. Obviously, it has 3 colors in it, but black allows you to play the cards you love, but also bring them back and then do it again. Right. So I think that's very specific to black. And it's just kind of like fun. I guess fun. Fun is subjective, but it's risky and you have to take chances and, you know, you live on the edge a little bit. You get a little dangerous. And I think that's what I love about black the most is it allows me to play risky for big payoffs.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing is like black is powerful.
Yes.
Black cards do powerful things. You just have to, you know, pay life for it and hope that's fine.
Blow up your whole board. I don't know.
Sack your whole board and hope that you don't need it. All right. We're going to talk about what black is best at. We've hinted at a lot of these already. At this point, every card color in Magic has some way to do the basics of Commander. Or every color has some way to ramp, to draw, to, you know, further your game plan, removal, board wipes. They all just sort of do them in slightly different ways. Yeah. So some may do some things better or may rely on other kinds of resources to get it done. So we're going to talk about, like, especially when you're building primarily a black deck.
A mono deck specifically, yeah.
Yeah. It's good to know the answers to, like, what should this mono black deck be about? What are going to be the strengths of the deck? So then you can shore up the weaknesses and you can really lean into like what your deck is good at, you know? Like I think about it in like sports terms. I'm not really like a sports person,
I'm a sports guy.
But like if you have this pitcher and he's really good at pitching and that's like black is really good at pitching, you're not going to be like, we're going to put him in the outfield because he's like, because we need an outfielder. Yeah. He's a pitcher, you know?
You put them where they're supposed to go.
Right. So you need to know what black does, what position it plays in on a baseball field. And the very first thing that I think we think of in Black and Commander is tutoring.
100%. Like, It's iconic. It's been around for so long. I think it's probably one of the most iconic art pieces that
That's
people
Demonic
would,
Tutor, yeah.
Demonic Tutor, that people would recognize as a Magic card. I mean, who doesn't want to find exactly what they're looking for?
Right. I a lot of cards, like a lot of other colors, have tutors, but they search for like specific things. Black has the unique position of being able to search for any card. And sometimes you pay life for that, and sometimes you don't. Demonic Tutor, of course, just lets you search through your library. Get one card. Trade this card for that card, the perfect card.
The one.
And then, of course, Vampiric Tutor is also very popular in Commander. You pay 2 life, and it goes on top. So you're paying this card for the perfect card in a moment, and a little bit of life.
But it
you're
is
just
still
bargaining a little bit of your soul.
But at the same time, it is still risky to do that as a player because you put it on the top of your library. Somebody could mill you. Somebody could put that at the bottom of your library. So it's showing your hand in a little bit of a convoluted way that is still a risky type thing of like, I'm willing to do this to get that card.
Mm-hmm. And it's card disadvantage, right? Like this is like the ultimate card selection.
Yeah.
You're spending a card to get the perfect card. Where like blue will spend a card to look at some cards and do a little thinking and then get a pretty good card.
Yeah.
Black is like, no, I'm gonna get the one that I need right now because why would I do anything else?
Yeah.
So it's it's a 1-for-1 and a little bit of a tempo play, but it's gonna be awesome.
It's going to be so good when you get to do it.
So that is a big part of Black's color pie. What is the next one?
The next one is creature removal.
Oh, yeah.
There's some of the best cards in Magic for creature removal are black.
And they're so efficient in Black. Because, like, of course, when you think of something, like, kind of ambitious and kind of, like, evil.
Yes.
The first thing you think of is
Removal.
murder, right?
Quite
it's just,
literally one of my favorite cards.
Yeah. I mean, like, just killing something.
Yeah. You're like, but it's so targeted and it pairs well. I know we'll get into this conversation later, but so many people run multicolored decks because black does this so well. They're like, I need this filled in somewhere else that I'm going to take this color and pair it with it. But removal is just, it allows you to look at the board and make active decisions to go, this is a huge problem. I'm going to get rid of it right now.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like such a huge part of the black color pie for me. It is like, you think of like a mono black character being like, oh, that guy's in the way.
Yeah.
We gotta
veto.
take care of him. Yeah.
Sleeping with the fishes.
And that's what I think of when I think of like power and the manipulation of power. So it makes sense that black is really good at killing specific things. Like we think of Infernal Grasp, which is sort of a more recent black removal spell, but it's 1 and a black destroys a creature and you lose a little life for it. Again, trading life for efficiency here.
I think another great one is Defile, and I think it's a great example of trading something. So target creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn for each swamp you control. So you're like, oh, well, probably playing mono black, so you can remove something fairly easy, but it's a -1/-1. It is not an exile. It is not, a direct thing you might be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, it gets around indestructibility, and it's really hard to protect your creature from this kind of thing. You can't regenerate it. It just sort of gets the life sucked out of it. And that's another thing that comes up a lot in black in Commander is this devotion to black.
Yes.
Is that like, if you're playing black, you want to be playing a lot of black because some of the most powerful cards in Commander that are in black are like care about how
much
black you are. Like Defile just means like it's more powerful the more power you give to the swamp.
I don't want to say that like black's the only one that does -1/- counters, but I would say the one that does it the most.
Green does also in terms of counters, but black is the one that just gives -X/-X.
Yeah.
Nothing else really gets there.
And it gets around so much, like you said.
Yeah. Classic, go for the throat, of course, but it's not all just targeted removal. Black also uses edicts a lot, which is an old card that just says each player sacrifices a creature.
Love it.
And again, you're trading one of your creatures for one of your opponent's creatures because you're ready to throw some
built it that way.
Some thrall into the trash, some zombie, who cares for their creature.
Yeah, but chances are because in the way that we're talking about, you're so invested in black and you're so invested in these cards, a lot of the cards that you are just throwing away tend to have value for you, not necessarily other people, but you're like, yeah, I'll throw away this thing, but I'll also get to ping you for it on my way out, which is like a double whammy.
Yeah, I mean, creatures are disposable. Cards are disposable. Everything in black is just like whatever it takes to get to them to 0 life, you know? I wanted to mention a couple of the big edicts in Commander. Of course, Plague Crafter is one of many cards that do this, but it's ETB. Each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. Now that's insult to injury.
You get a double whammy. You're like, well, you can't. Oh,
you don't have anything.
Good. Now you're going to have even less. and I think a lot of people, like, of course, ideally you have other things when you're playing like a Plague Crafter. You're like, oh, I can get it. But you can also just ditch the Plague Crafter.
Yeah, bring it back later.
Yeah, you bring it back later. You don't have to worry about it. If you're like, this is the only thing I have right now, but I definitely need to clear this board. You like play it, gets rid of it, and then you bring it back later.
He's disposable. They're reusable. We'll break. They're recyclable.
Oh.
We're recycling.
We're doing good. We're recycling our cards.
Of course, one of the highest devotion to black cards that we play is Grave Pact. 1 black, black, black. Whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. And it's like a blood like oath type thing.
Yes, you are signing in blood, but not the card.
Yeah, right. That's a different black card.
We'll talk about it later. It really just it gives you the most for doing the thing that it is made to do, and your devotion to black.
Yeah, it almost feels like a like the doll that you stick pins in, kind of.
Oh yeah, like a voodoo doll.
Like a voodoo doll, but you're like, all right, I'll sack a thing, which means everyone sacks a thing, right?
We're doing it together, so
it's fair.
It almost feels less bad.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing it, so you're also doing it.
It's almost a one a white card. It's basically the same,
but it's just like the opposite.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same, but on the other side of the spectrum.
And the final way to get rid of creatures, black is also pretty good at board wipes.
Oh yeah.
They tend to be a little bit more expensive, but there's 2 very good ones in Commander that are on the cheaper end. Starting with Damnation, which was originally a white card that they color flipped, and they were like, black can do this too. It just says destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated.
I mean, it plays on what we were just talking about. It's almost the exact same thing as white, but just on the other side.
Right.
You want to do the thing, it's going to do the thing, and well, look, even they thought.
I mean, Wrath of God is God comes down, decides no one's worthy, destroys everything.
Yeah.
And Damnation is, no one's worthy, you're coming down with us.
Yeah, like you can either be uplifted or torn down to the ground with me.
And then, of course, there's Toxic Deluge. We've been talking about -1/-1,
Yep.
how powerful that is. And Toxic Deluge is 2 and a black, which means you've got to give a little bit of life to make it work. As an additional cost to cast this spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn.
Chances are when you're doing this, it is worth any amount of life that you need to pay to
What
get
is
that.
the highest amount of life you've paid on a Toxic Deluge?
Ooh, maybe like 15.
It goes... Like, I paid 28 life into a Toxic Deluge once.
Did it work out?
It worked out.
Yes!
Like, but I mean, I died because you can't pay 28 life and win that game. But I removed the problem.
And that is a win in my book. Because like everybody's like, sometimes their end game is like, I want to win the whole game, and I'm like, I want to do something splashy and fun and solve a problem, and then I'm like, okay, that's good for me.
Yeah, that's you're like, you know what? I did have the answer. I killed myself in the process, but I rained poison down on us all.
And it felt good.
The second category, or the next category here, this is sort of a subcategory of creature removal. Black has also been given planeswalker removal. And in addition to white, it's like white and black are the only 2 colors that get targeted planeswalker removal specifically.
I wore this
it's been
shirt,
huge.
I wore this shirt today because we were going to talk about planeswalker removal.
Liliana loves planeswalker removal.
Yeah,
As long as it's not her, she's fine.
She always comes back.
There's a new removal spell that's really great. It's Bitter Triumph. 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, black loves that line. Discard a card or pay 3 life. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Perfect.
I mean, 3 life.
Who just needs it?
I mean, chances are you're probably going to play this like earlier in the game. And earlier in the game is when I get I'm like, yeah, 5 life, 3 life, and I'm like, that's just never going to come to bite me. And
I can't imagine this being a problem.
So I think you're a little bit more riskier early game, but even late game, if you have like a Teferi that is just a nuisance, you're like, well,
what's 3 life between
what is
enemies,
3 life? Besides maybe the exact amount for you to win or lose a game.
A couple other really good ones. We love Murderous Rider. Destroy target creature, a planeswalker. You lose 2 life, and it's attached to a zombie on a horse.
And I mean, it's also an
zombie
adventure.
On a zombie horse?
Yeah, it's a zombie on a zombie horse.
Yeah, it's not just like a regular horse.
And it's an adventure too. So like you get the best of both worlds, which I was super happy when I saw that come out. And
I really like Murderous Rider in black decks specifically because black's really good at taking creatures in your graveyard and putting them back to your hand, which is why the Murderous Rider, when it dies, you put it on the bottom of its owner's library. So you can't loop it super easily. But in decks that want creatures, this can get milled really easily and is really easy to return to your hand. So I like that it just gives you kind of this free removal spell that you can get with black cards.
I think the other side of it as well, quite literally the other side, is it has lifelink. So black cards having lifelink, which you would mostly see, you see lifelink a lot in white decks. But having to be able to sacrifice so much life and pay for that life, you got to find ways in black, if you're playing mono black, to gain life back because it's important. Because you
do need some.
just a little bit will go a really long way.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about that. We might as well talk about it now. Let's find out.
Oh, no, I skipped. I'm sorry.
No. Black has like these vampirism abilities, and it has the lifelink where it's like I drain my opponents of their life and I gain all of that life myself. And there is a cost, but your opponents are paying.
It's not me. The problem's not me. It's you.
We've alluded to it a little bit already, but like Grey Merchant of Asphodel is one of the best life gain cards in Commander.
Gary.
A good man.
We love a Gary. For those that are unfamiliar or newer, it's just, we call Gary because it's gray.
Yeah. And he's a familiar lad. Yeah. When Gary enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. Again, that devotion coming in big. Then you gain life equal to the life lost this way. It's a huge win con in black decks. Again, it's that disposability. You play Gary, you drain lives, you gain a bunch of life, sack Gary, play him again. Just suck the lives out of your opponents at your benefit, of course. Exsanguinate does a very similar thing, and makes sense. I like this new art for Exsanguinate. It leans into the vampire.
Well, I think black, and there's so many iconic types of cards, creature types for cards, and that lean right into that.
Right.
And vampire, you're speaking to, look at what.
I mean, speaking of vampires, black has this huge drain effects, right? These Gary and Exsanguinate and Torment of Hailfire, big drain effects.
Flashy.
But it also has little
tiny
ones
little
that Death by a Thousand Cuts. Yeah.
Yes.
Ones like Blood Artist.
And Zulaport Cutthroat, which I think is iconic. And even Mirkwood Bats is brand new. New? It's new-ish.
It's newish. Yeah, I've died to it plenty of times already, but it's still new.
And that's why when I talked about earlier, I was like, yeah, chances are you're sacrificing all these little things, but they are providing you value in a way that nobody else at the table ideally is going to be able to capitalize or benefit on. So if you're like, yeah, I'll throw away this little thing. Oh, but I'm going to get you for one. Yeah. And I'm going to get you for another one. And that adds up, especially in a full pod, because you're like, I'm hitting everybody for, one every single turn or every time I sacrifice literally anything.
Yeah. I mean, if you can, black's really good at making a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Making a bunch of disposable, pests and zombies and just stuff that you make a lot of that you're like, oh, I don't care about this zombie. I care about what this zombie gets me.
Yes.
Which is why, that's where that flavor really comes in. Where you're like, you can picture a warlock that's got this awful laboratory where it's like, well, I've been growing these horrible bugs because I can, murder them and make stuff out of them. I
didn't know you had a window into my bedroom.
Oh, God. Lady, that's been our time. We gotta send you.
I'll send you a bug, a parting bug.
Thank you. Ooh. But like using that exchange of life and using paying life and gaining life for cards is another thing that black does really well.
Yes.
Like black card draw is very efficient, but you have to pay for it.
And like I said, it's like signing to a warlock patron. You're signing in blood, which is probably one of the cards we're going to talk about.
It sure is. Black for a sorcery. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. I love that this is target player because it's like, usually it's you. You're like, yeah, I'll sign in the contract for the cards. Give me the cards. But the idea of you being like, oh no, you're in a contract now.
Well, I also love it because it's one of those things where I was mentioning earlier, when you have a card on the top of your library, or you're like, oh, they're gonna mill themselves out. No, you're gonna draw the 2. You're so close, like you're gonna draw the 2 cards and I'll lose the life, or you'll lose the life. And it's really like, I don't know, schemy.
It is. I mean,
that's a good word, schemy?
It is. I mean, it's completely like there's a black mechanic called connive.
Yeah, it's connive.
That like really makes sense for black. And like this kind of effect is super, super common. Knight's Whisper does a very similar thing. You draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. Read the Bones is 3 mana, but it's scry 2, draw 2, you lose 2. You're again trading a resource for these cards, but these are very cheap. Like they're undercosted even for blue, who's like known for drawing cards. Blue has to pay a little bit more mana for it because black pays life instead of mana value.
Which I think, in a game, you're like, oh, well, it takes a little bit more mana for blue to do it. So it might happen a little later in the game, but I think one of the benefits of using life is you can do it earlier in the game. You can establish yourself. It's a little bit more aggressive, but you can also like hold back on it. So you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll slow it down. But you also don't want to let people get ahead. So you have to read the table really well to make those active decisions of, do I be impulsive? Do I do it right now? Can I, that thing I really wanted to do, I have those cards in my hand, but is this the most opportune moment to do it?
Right. And I mean, that kind of thing makes such a big difference, especially when you're paying with other permanents, right? Like when you're something like a Village Rites is a really great draw spell in black. It's a single black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, not pay 2 life, you sacrifice a creature instead to draw 2 cards.
Yep.
So that's the kind of thing where it's very easy to cast this and be like, oh, I'll just sack my creature right now and turn it into 2 more cards. But you can also use it in a really smart way where you're like, all right, I'm going to block and sack it, or I'm going to do this in response to a board wipe. And now I've basically traded nothing.
Yes.
And which is what black wants to be doing anyway, is like, I've already killed a thing that wants to die.
Yeah.
And I've gotten 2 cards out of it.
I think a lot of people, while it is, straightforward, but being able to make those educated decisions, those really smart tactical plays of like, oh, well, I could do it now because it's fun, but I could also wait and trade and do it at the most opportune moment. And it gives you the most benefit for how the deck is supposed to run is very smart. Like it takes a lot of noggin use to like really be able to get that far and think that tactically about
because sometimes
your blocks.
It's right for you to sack a creature right now and be like, I need the cards and it's more important than this thing is. And sometimes it's right to wait and try and use that creature for its creatureiness. And that's a really tough give and take that black offers, is like, okay, is faster better in this situation, or are the resources more important to me? And like that's what makes a card like Necropotence so difficult to play. Because Necropotence is black for an enchantment. It says skip your draw step. What? Danger. Then it says whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. What? Why is this good? Pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. So it gives you can pay 1 life to get 1 card at the end of your turn, but you can do so as many times as you'd like. I always underplay Necropotence. I'm so safe with it. I'm like, I'll draw up to 7 and I'll keep this. Yeah. Like I'll keep my nice 7. I won't discard anything. I'll only pay like 3 or 4 life. Sometimes it's right to be like, go.
Yeah.
Pay all that life.
I mean, especially like it happens in so many different cards in black of where you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to, I want to play that. I'm going to, I'll pay that life. But sometimes I think mechanically the way that black is supposed to be played is you're supposed to make those brave, bold decisions because it tends to reward you for making those kind of like scary decisions. And so, you know, that's why I'm like, you got to kind of go with your instincts sometimes.
You got to flirt with death.
You got to be dangerous with it.
Yeah, I mean, black is great at card draw. It's great at turning your life into cards. It's great at turning your creatures into cards. And as we know, and I've talked about so many times, cards win commander games. But of course, with all those cards, how are you supposed to cast that? Black can't ramp, can it?
Oh, I mean, it ramps, but it ramps in black. Yeah. I have personally been affected by how mono black ramps. But I guess it was years ago now, but I played a mono black deck and I played a Soul Ring, and I made the mistake of playing the Soul Ring, and it really, you know, screwed me over in the long
What, did
term.
people just hit you?
Well, I didn't get any more swamps.
Oh yeah, you need the swamps. That's the thing. Is like that's what we're talking about. Like with black being such a devoted color.
Yeah.
Like you need the powerful cards that we've talked about. Is like Sign in Blood is black, Necropotence black. Murderous Rider is black 1. Murderous and then Swift End is also black 1. Yeah. Like you need these pips to be able to play mono black or like a powerful black strategy in any way.
And having that devotion pays off big time when it comes to ramping in black, like Cabal Coffers. I mean, more black.
Yeah, I mean, so Cabal Coffers is a land that doesn't tap for mana naturally. Nope. It says 2 tap, add a black for each swamp you control. So you can pay 2 and tap this and usually add 5, 6, 10 mana depending on how devoted to black you are.
It's like if I may be so bold and controversial, it is like a black guy's cradle. I mean, in my eyes.
Yeah, but it's like you don't even need stuff. You just need to like, I guess, have played lands.
Yeah, hopefully.
And the big combo that's always with Cabal Coffers is you play Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, which says all lands are swamps, which means that even if you're not super devoted to black, you are now. So that makes your Cabal Coffers even stronger.
Yep.
But in mono black strategies, Cabal Coffers just said like, oh, you're in the fold? You're really in the fold.
We got you. You have decided to be devout.
Yeah.
And come to the dark side, so to speak. Well, not even so to speak, literally. Yeah. This is what you get.
You will be rewarded for your devotion. and that's what makes black just so powerful, I think, is like it draws you in with how much power it is, and it makes you want to be mono black.
Yeah.
I have 2. I don't play a ton of black.
Yeah.
But I have 2 mono black decks because they're
you're
just like they're so powerful.
Yeah. I would say almost every deck, mostly maybe like 75-80% of black decks I play have black in them.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's the dark side, right? It promises you power in exchange for nothing.
They call me Darth Lady.
Darth Danger.
But the crazy thing, not crazy, but the interesting thing about black ramp is when you look at it, you're like, that doesn't seem very exciting. You know, you're like, it doesn't have the splashy thing of like, okay, you know, play the thing, do it. You can do it right now. You're like, well, if you pay for it, which is exactly what black wants you to do, you can get to do the thing like Cabal Stronghold. Yeah. You're like, you can tap it for a colorless, great, but I mean, we are devout to black. We want swamps. It is not even a swamp. It is just a land. But if you pay 3 and tap it, you get black for each basic swamp you control. So it's like a cheaper. It's the Cabal Coffers we have at home.
Exactly. But this is even more like you're mono black now. Yes. This and now you get 2 of these as long as you're more devoted to mono black. Anyway, devoted to mono black. Like black ramp is explosive, right? Like you use stuff like Cryptghast that says whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add black to your mana pool. Again, cares about swamps specifically. It gives you a ton of mana for your devotion, right? Yeah. And it gives it to you right now. Like you can't tap Cabal Coffers and like save some of it later. No. Like it's now. This is a big turn now. And you've done it. Now you get to have like this big turn. And that's like where the powerful cards like Dark Ritual come in, right? Where you're spending a single black to make 3 black. Now you're trading a card for 3 black mana. You're like, that's not even anything. Unless you get a, Bolas's Citadel on turn 4 or whatever.
That's exactly what you want. And I mean, I alluded to Bolas's Citadel earlier of being able to just look at your top card and you're like, I want to play that. I'm going to pay life for it right now. Oh, that's exciting too. I'm going to do that. And so it's so explosive in the way that it works, but it also rewards you for being kind of impulsive. You're like, oh yeah, I'm so devout. I'm playing this exactly how I'm supposed to do it. And here's my big turn. And then it's going to be insane.
Right.
And so I think for me as a Black player, that's where the payoff is getting to do the crazy thing that I've been working to this whole game, and then just bam.
Right.
And as a analytical player, or I'm also paying attention to when the precise moment that I should be doing that happens. Because it's easy to do it early and then blow it all. And you're like, well, I got no life. I got nothing left. What am I going to do? And then everybody just wipes your whole board. And you're like, well, that was fun playing with you. Yeah. It's a good game.
This will be my game.
Be over here. But it just makes you a smarter player by playing more and playing more colors and getting to know the deep, like, Vorthos, is that the word I'm looking for? Like how exactly something is supposed to be played.
Sure. Yeah. Vorthos is more, it's more like a spike, I guess.
Okay.
Like playing precisely and playing smart.
Yeah.
Is so tricky when you're trading. You're trying to measure how much mana you could have based on how much life you have, how many cards you could have, but you only have so much life and you only have so much mana. It's tough to get the perfect brew here. Yeah. Luckily, we've also alluded to this. Black has a lot of ways to give you back what you've already lost. It does have that recursion package. It feeds off of the graveyard. It uses, reanimate and animate deads to bring back a creature in your graveyard and use it for your evil
dark
deeds.
Magic deeds.
And predictably, reanimate trades your life for it. Put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. You lose life equal to its mana value.
I mean, we love to reanimate, but we also like to animate dead. I think that's also probably a staple in most mono black decks. It's 1 in a black. It's an enchantment or enchant creature in a graveyard. When animate dead enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses enchant creature card in a graveyard, and it gains enchant creature put onto the battlefield with animate dead. Return enchanted creature card to the battlefield under your control and attach animate dead to it. When animate dead leaves the battlefield, that creature controller sacrifices it.
One more.
An enchanted creature gets -1/-0. I don't know if I said that right.
Have you ever read Animate Dead before?
I mean, yes, but I'm not good at it.
Yeah, well, it's just because we know what Animate Dead does. Nobody reads that text.
No.
You're like, Animate Dead. Yeah, bring the thing and bring it back, and this stays attached to it.
Yeah.
And it's a little weaker because it's the dead version.
Yeah.
But because when they designed this card, the rules weren't super precise that they've had to errata this card to death.
You made me read this one?
It's brutal. It doesn't make, you understand intellectually what it does, but in Magic language, it's so much more complicated.
But it is an example, I know you guys did the podcast of rules that you get wrong and stuff like that, is reading those things and the specificity that it is telling you exactly how it works.
Yeah. It's I also really like Victimize in black decks. It feels so you understand the flavor exactly. It's you sacrifice a creature and you reanimate 2 creatures tapped. So you're
Easy.
I'm going to sacrifice a living thing to get these 2 dead things back, and that just feels like exactly what you would predict a black mage.
Yeah, and then because you've made, hypothetically, you've made this deck to do what it's supposed to do, you're bringing stuff back, even if it's tapped. Ideally, it has some kind of effect when it enters the battlefield or you play it again. And so you're getting even more payoff of bringing these things back from the graveyard that are going to do something immediately, even though they're tapped.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing is what black is really good at. This resilience, this inevitability, where it's just that thing won't stay dead for long, so we need to move right now.
Yeah.
Because black also uses things that are if it would die, it doesn't. It comes right back. Like Malakir Rebirth, got Kai's Ghost Form. These kind of things that are I'll sack it, but don't worry, I've got a kind of grosser, ghostlier version of it coming back. But the other thing that I really want to talk about in this section was mass reanimation.
Yes.
Because this is where Liliana really shines.
Woo, baby.
This is where black tends to really take over the game, is casting something like a Living Death or a Rise of the Dark Realms.
Ooh. We are big, I am a big Rise of the Dark Realms fan.
I have never cast it.
What?
I know. I'm not much of a black mage. I'm really not.
We're going to change that.
I know. I'm like trying. I have 2 mono black decks. One of them is an equipment deck. I don't know what I'm doing. You gotta.
Equipments help fill
break
in
the
some
rules
of the
sometimes.
gaps
Yeah.
in mono black. I
Yeah.
would agree. I would say so, not even agree.
So reanimation, a huge part of black. Of course, we're using the graveyard as a tool, which means we have to fill the graveyard.
We love it. I think Stitcher Supplier, I don't know if I say it's underrated card. It is super strong. Not even just in Commander, but even in like Limited.
I mean,
when that came, oh gosh, I was running it like crazy.
Stitcher Supplier is a huge tool in any constructed format, and it feels kind of small potatoes for Commander, but the fact that it mills 3 when it enters and when it dies is so many cards for a single mana. Black uses the graveyard as card selection.
Yes.
It says here's Stitcher Supplier mills 3 and then mills 3 again. So you're like, here's 6 cards that you could animate dead, that you could reanimate. And then you get to pick the best one of the graveyard. It uses the graveyard as card selection in addition to all of its card advantage.
I think of it as a second hand. I have the cards I have physically in my hand, but I know that the way that this is built, I will have access to all of these, unless you get Bajuka bogged. But
But who worries about that?
No, not me.
Golgari Thug is a great dredge tool. When it's in the graveyard, you can return it to your hand and mill 4. Corpse Churn is one of my favorites. It's an instant that says mill 3, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. This is great. A little bit of recursion, a little bit of self-mill to fuel your plan. All of these cards are right in Black's wheelhouse.
I think controversial is Dauthi Voidwalker.
I mean, that's the interesting thing about Black is it's so good at filling the graveyard. It's so good at reanimating, but it's also really good at eliminating the graveyard.
Yes. I mean, I talked about it a little bit as Bajuka Bog. And I think people are like, okay, you can just get rid of the graveyard. All right, fine. But when you're playing mono black, as you've seen, I've Bajuka bogged myself to get benefit of stuff in my graveyard with certain triggers and things like that. And that's where the payoff of being risky, being dangerous. You're like, I would have never thought to Bajuka bog myself. I'm just worried about what's in somebody else's graveyard. Right. I was like, I'm worried about what's in my graveyard.
Exactly.
It's scary, okay?
I love that this is in Black's wheelhouse too. Is Dauthi Voidwalker says, if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a void counter on it, and then you can sack Dauthi to cast any of the things in your graveyard. It's like, oh, your graveyard? They're also tools of mine. Plus something like a Callous Blood Mage I've really liked in Black. It kind of just does the list of all the things that Black really wants. Yes. It's a vampire warlock. It comes in and makes a pest. Great.
Love
it's
it.
like sack fodder. It draws a card and you lose 1 life. Sure. Yep. And the next one is exile target player's graveyard. So a little bit of manipulation over the graveyard, a little bit of card draw. Also, it just gives you the card. It gives you the tool to sack later. And it's another body itself that you can bring back from the graveyard.
And it's a little body, and it has an enter the battlefield effect. So if you are bringing it back and you're like, well, it enters tapped hypothetically, you're still getting value off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you something right now. Okay, we have talked about, those are the big things that Black does, right? We've talked about tutoring, removing creatures and planeswalkers, card draw, explosiveness, especially in ramp. It doesn't do land ramp, but it does a lot of mana right now.
Yes.
Reanimation, self-mill, graveyard hate, and life drain and gain. We're going to talk a little bit about Black's creature types, because this is how Black gives you all this power, right? And we've alluded to these a lot. Every color in Magic has creatures that it supports. It supports uniquely.
Yeah.
But Black uses zombies and vampires so iconically.
Yes.
And it supports them, of course, as kindred builds, as a creature type that supports each other, but also just as a flavor type. It
is such a strong identifier when you're thinking about the staples of what Black as a color in Magic is. It is conniving. It is sacrificial. It is devout. It is packs. It's all of these things. You're like, well, when I think of my knowledge of spooky, scary stuff, I was a vampire. Yeah. It's a warlock. It's all of these things that are
demons.
Demons, yes.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very strong. I mean, horrors, skeletons, fairies.
Yeah.
You think of like Rankle, like a mischievous little tricksy
little
fairy.
punks.
Oh,
yeah.
we love them. Oh, I love them.
Like it's manipulative, right? Like I think looking through the creature types that each color supports tells you so much about how, like the energy of the color.
Yeah.
And you look through this list and you're like rats, skeletons, clerics, assassins, pirates. These are types that manipulate power or get exchanged for power.
Yeah.
And when they come together, you're like, oh, like I get it. I think if you're telling somebody who doesn't play Magic that black is the color of like rogues
and vampires.
They're like, okay, yeah. No, I see what you're doing.
You can use a lot of like context from movies and things like that to really help newer players identify with something.
Yeah, I mean, and the support that black offers those creature types is just feels, you're like, okay, I'm in on the joke here.
Yeah.
And I think the coolest thing, the thing that people love so much about black is how consistent and legible the flavor of black is. That you're just like, oh, I want to kind of get down and dirty and evil and like be a vampire in this game. And that kind of role playing really comes in big with black cards. So that's why like zombies are so popular. That's why vampires are so popular. Rats is a really, really
iconic,
popular creature type. And black offers pretty good support for it. Like one of the biggest Kindred cards in black is Kindred Dominance. Just says like, I'm keeping all my stuff here. Everything else can die.
Bye-bye. It really supports you picking. And I say that is like, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to play mono black. I'm devout. I'm playing it. But you're like, but are you playing mono black vampires? Are you playing mono black rats? Are you playing pirates, rogues, things like that? It also really strongly supports you to make those kinds of decisions. Whereas I think there are other ones that also support you to do that, but it's like you must pick.
Yeah.
It takes you and you're like, the finger is on this. You must do it. And if you do it well, I will give you everything you've ever wanted and dreamed of. But if you kind of waver with it and you know, like you were talking about, like being a little safe, it's like, you're not getting the full benefit of playing black.
Right. Yeah. Black is really good at supporting creature types in a more general way. Like Kindred Dominance could be in any creature type deck, but it rewards you for picking a lane. Like Pact of the Serpent is such a good draw spell. It's like a 3 mana and you can draw equal to the number that you have and you lose that much life. So there is a cost. Of course, it's a black spell, but if you're that dedicated to fairies, then you can draw 10 cards.
And you're like, those 10 cards are probably going to be the best 10 cards I've ever seen in my life.
It's like Cover of Darkness gives everything that's a creature type fear, which is
fear is
good.
So fun. It's such an old mechanic that I think a lot of newer players haven't particularly played with, and then having it come back and having it be more relevant, you're like, oh, but that's so cool, that's so exciting.
Yeah. Again, it's like that. If you commit to something, black will pay you off
big time.
But yeah, it's I really like that there's so much generic creature type support in these colors. We are going to talk about what black struggles with. And we're going to talk about how to win with black and how to lock up the best black synergies after a few words from our sponsors.
Take that, you sugary son of a... Oh, hello. You caught me in the middle of work. I'm Greta, Sweet Tooth Scourge, and holidays are my busy season. Look, I spend too much time struggling with food already, so when I get home, I want a meal that's quick, easy, and delicious. That's why I use Factor, America's #1 meal delivery service. With Factor, you'll get fresh, flavor-packed meals that show up right at your door and aren't trying to kill you. You minty moron! Yeah! Just choose from any of their 35-plus, never-frozen, chef-crafted meals that only take 2 minutes to prepare. It's perfect for a busy holiday schedule, and not just for dinner. They've got quick breakfast options, lunch to go, and even grab-and-go snacks. Personally, I'm a fan of their home-style turkey and herb gravy. You'll forgive me if I skip dessert. So get Factor and save time this holiday season without wasting money on takeout and drive-thrus. That way you'll avoid my nemesis, fast food.
Can't catch me! Ha-ha!
Get back here, you stupid cookie!
Head to factormeals.com/command50 and use code command50 to get 50% off. That's code command50 at factormeals.com/command50 to get 50% off.
Josh, This is an intervention.
Can it wait? I have all these resumes I gotta read.
We miss you, man. The old you, before you spent every waking moment browsing job sites.
I can't help it. I gotta hire people so that the work can get done.
The work needs you, Josh, so you need Indeed, the website where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Their hiring platform does the hard work for you, finding candidates quickly with powerful tools like Instant Match.
But how do I know they're qualified?
With Indeed, you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements.
So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites, you can spend hours drawing cards or making deals.
I do like drawing cards. Okay, that does it. I'm using Indeed today.
Okay.
Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/CommandZone. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/CommandZone. Just go to Indeed.com/CommandZone and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/CommandZone. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Josh, do you hear that sound?
Is that bells? Oh no, not again!
That's right, it's gift buying season.
Ah, wait, it's not that bad. I'll just buy stuff from RAYCON.
Yeah.
We've been recommending RAYCON wireless earbuds for years on this podcast. They make great gifts for any music or podcast lover, and their batteries last all day. I use mine constantly.
And this year, you can find even more of your gift list through RAYCON, since they've expanded their business to include RAYCON Home and PowerTech.
They still earn their reputation for high quality and low price, but with way more products like their Magic 180 charging cable.
It provides hyperspeed charging for all your devices, iOS, micro USB, and Type-C included. Plus, it rotates 180 degrees and is built to last.
Oh, I could use one of those for myself. All right, that's one gift down right away.
Wait, you're on your own gift list?
Self-care is important, Jimmy.
Hurry now to buyraycon.com/command to get 15% off your entire RAYCON order. Perfect for last-minute gifts or to ring in the new year.
That's buyraycon.com/command to get 15% off RAYCON products. Again, buyraycon.com/command.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. We are now talking about what Black struggles with in Commander, because it's important to know when you're building mono black or you're building even primarily a color, what this color struggles with, so you can be like, okay, I'll lean on other colors for those things, or I'll try and, if I'm building mono black, then I know what the weaknesses of my deck are and how to play to avoid some of those weaknesses. And the interesting thing is about mono black is there's not a lot of them.
There's really not a lot.
Like, black's pretty good at just about everything we need it to do. It's a really explosive with ramp. It draws a ton of cards. It's like, it can remove creatures. It gets board wipes.
Big creatures, big win cons.
Yeah, it's really good at winning the game.
Yep.
There's a couple of things that Wizards has kind of kept from black.
They should.
Which is fair.
Being too powerful is not great.
The big one is black can't, it really struggles with non-creature removal.
Yes.
Currently, it has one way to remove artifacts, and it is not a good way. And it is like sort of slowly getting worse enchantment removal.
Yes.
The big one, there's like one that we play that's a black card that removes enchantments, and it's Feed the Swarm.
Yes.
So it says just destroy target creature or enchantment. An opponent controls. You can't destroy your own, I guess. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Of course, we're losing life.
Your trade.
But
it's still kind of like, you're like, target creature or enchantment. Like it's an afterthought. Like you're like, oh, I'm not really worried about it.
It's also at sorcery speed, which is like, does make this card a real cost to put in your deck. But because it hits enchantments, it's one of the most played black removal spells ever, because the other black removal for enchantments is not great.
I'll be writing about this.
I mean, it's like debt to the commie. It says like, choose one, target opponent exiles a creature they control, or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control. But like, that's just if they have multiple enchantments, then you're not getting the one that you want.
Because you're like, well, I have, and chances are, if they're playing enchantments, they're probably playing multiple enchantments,
Right.
and there are really good ones that you're like, I do not want to get rid of this, and then you're like,
Right.
there are mediocre ones where you're like, I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be the one you want.
Right. Like they printed one other targeted enchantment spell, and it's Shatter the Oath. This was in Wilds of Eldraine. It's a 5 mana sorcery.
Gosh.
Destroy target creature or enchantment. Create a wicked roll token attached to one of a creature that you control. We don't play 5 mana sorcery speed targeted removal,
No.
even if black has no
Look,
other ways.
People make fun of me for just playing murder. They're like, it's just not efficient enough. And I'm not playing 5 mana, and
Yeah.
especially not at a sorcery speed.
So
it's just not going to happen.
This category is something that just black can't really do.
No.
So your mono black deck is just like, okay, guess you have that now.
That's somebody else's problem in Commander, not
Yeah,
mine.
you hope that somebody else wants to remove it because you're just not capable of doing it. The other thing that black struggles with is like stack interaction.
Yes.
It can't really interact with like a sorcery on the stack, or like if a big spell is about to resolve,
Mm-hmm.
black's like, hope it doesn't kill me.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, I've done the crazy thing, and that's what I built this deck to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. I mean, you can build a mono black deck to be controlling, but most of the time you're not really doing that, and you're just like, have fun. I did my cool thing. Now you can do yours. Please don't kill me.
Don't kill me. Okay. It has like a couple of pie breaks that we're going to talk about in a little bit that can kind of protect you, but they're old cards that aren't necessarily inside of black's color pie anymore. The main one is like Imp's Mischief. Yeah, what's this one?
It's an instant, which is great because we are usually stuck with sorceries.
Yeah.
It's change the target of target spell with a single target. 1. You lose life equal to that spell's mana value. That's your cost.
Yeah. So you're paying life to sort of redirect a spell. Yeah.
Which is still like, it has to be a target spell.
It has to be a targeted spell, and it can't be a targeted ability. It has to be like a spell on the stack, and it has to be targeting something that you don't want it to hit. I played Imp's Mischief some in Commander, and it's fun when it's great, but it's a little bit more narrow than you think it is. And it doesn't quite solve... you could swerve a counter spell, I suppose, as long as there's another target on the stack. It just doesn't quite do enough. There is a couple counter spells in black. The best one is this one with some incredible art.
Withering Boon. It's 1 and a black, and it is an interrupt. That's how old this is. And it's pay 3 life, counter target summon spell.
Which is a creature.
Just in case you didn't know. And
It's a creature counter spell.
It's a wild art piece.
It's unbelievable.
I love this kind of art.
Yeah, I mean, this is a counter spell specifically for creature spells, which black doesn't struggle with creature spells, so we don't tend to play a lot of Withering Boon. Like, yes, it can counter a Craterhoof, but that's about the only one that you really care about.
Yeah.
Like, you can remove most other problems.
Yeah.
There is, like, black does have a single fog.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's not the fog, but it is.
It is.
Darkness. And it prevents all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. I mean, it's
great.
It's 1 mana, so it's as good as fog, like a classic fog. It's just nobody really plays it.
Yeah, I play more darkness these days because, like, when I'm playing black and I'm spending a lot of life, I want to be like, hey, don't kill me.
No. Just kidding.
And it is an answer to like a Craterhoof type effect where that you can't really deal with in other ways.
And usually they're swinging like completely, so you're like, well, do that, and I will protect myself, and then I will kill you.
Yeah, it's so I think that darkness does have a bit of a cost, but it doesn't necessarily stop like a big board wipe or anything like that. There is one final interaction piece that black does have. It's Stunning Reversal, and I've never seen this card played in a game, but it is awesome. It's 4 and a black for an instant. The next time you would lose the game this turn, instead draw 7 cards and your life total becomes 1. Exile Stunning Reversal.
What a deal.
Pretty good, right?
It is quintessential black, in my opinion, as far as the game design goes. Is like, okay, you're not going to die, but you're only going to have 1 life.
You're going to be at
but
1
you
life.
will have 7 cards, which means you could possibly do something about it. And I feel like that's where it always keeps you like on the edge of your seat of like, you could.
Yeah. And it's this bargain, right? Like you're spending 4 mana in an instant, like in a card on this. And it's only for like if things have gone really wrong.
Desperately
it's
wrong.
so narrow. And that seems to be a lot of Black's like stack interaction pieces are super, super narrow that they don't see a ton of play. Like Black's stack interaction and even like enchantment and creature interaction is player removal.
Yes. I will remove you from this game before I will taint myself by playing those cards.
Some interaction piece.
No.
Darkness. Oh, I'll kill you before you kill me. And that's like the big thing is you have to know that you're not going to be able to interact with what your opponents are doing super well. If it's on a creature, great. Yeah, you got it. But if they're doing anything else, your deck is going to struggle against that strategy. So you do have to prepare for that a little bit. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to mention is, of course, land ramp. Black is quite bad at, like where white has catch-up ramp and other ways to like reanimate lands and that kind of thing. Green, of course, has land ramp. Blue and black are left out in the cold here. That's why you lean on stuff like Cabal Coffers and Urborg so heavily, like those two combinations of cards. I did want to mention Crypt of Agadim because this is a very cool black land that does a similar thing.
Yep.
It comes in tapped, it taps for black, but it also says 2 tap, add black to your mana pool for each black creature in your graveyard. Bingo.
Love it.
Ton of mana all at once. So there's Cabal Coffers, there's Cabal Stronghold, there's Crypt of Agadim, there's even Nykthos, which will reward you for your devotion to black. That is sort of how black ramps, is with these expensive individual lands rather than getting a ton of lands.
Yeah. It's like, look, you're good at almost everything. I'm going to slow you down just a little bit and make you work for it. But you have to be smart about it because you're getting all this mana right now and you don't get to use it later.
Right. And it also means you probably run pieces like Expedition Map that goes to find either Urborg or Cabal Coffers, depending on what you have, or go find Nykthos if your board is big, because it is really important that you do have some kind of ramp in black. And it also means if you're playing against black, you need an answer to one of these lands.
You must stop them.
They're very powerful.
It's part of the win condition of like, if somebody's searching for that thing, they probably have one of those win cons in their hand.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to make a ton of mana with it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be playing the tutor. Or, you'll see demonic tutors or vampiric tutors spent on getting the other half, like finding one of those lands. Okay, so the interesting thing about that is that's sort of it. Like black can do everything else. It just pays life for it. Yep. Or like it sacrifices creatures to do it, or it discards cards to do it, or it can only do it at sorcery speed. There are limitations to what black can do, but you can achieve maximum power as long as you like have something to sacrifice or have something to do with it. So I wanted to talk about this because this is very unique to black. The biggest downside to black in my mind in Commander isn't a mechanical, like a card thing. It's a social thing.
Oh, don't I know?
The table is terrified of you.
Yeah.
If you're playing these big, like powerful black cards, if you have a Cabal Coffers, if you have Bolas's Citadel or like one of the big creatures that black can reanimate, you're the problem and you're going to attract a lot of hate. And you're not necessarily going to have the interaction to be able to defend yourself.
No, I think that's definitely one of the unique downfalls of playing mono black. It's like, you are the bad guy. You are the problem. You have all this crazy stuff. You can do all this crazy stuff because it's so outwardly like explosive, as opposed to like blue, which is a little bit more calculated. You're holding everything back until the most opportune moment. And that like, even when you're playing a partner of black with another color, people still know how explosive black paired with that color is, that you're still the problem.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the cards that make black so powerful are so divisive, right? Like tutors are very divisive in Commander.
People hate them or love them.
Yeah, I mean, there's playgroups who all play all of them, of course. Why wouldn't we? And then there's some that are like, I think tutors make the game less fun.
Yeah.
So then you run into this problem of like when you want to play black and you don't want to attract a ton of attention, you just don't really have the ability to do so.
Yeah.
Because like the way that black wins the game is with kill everyone spells like Grey Merchant of Asphodel or Torment of Hailfire, which are not necessarily win cons that people love.
No, they're like, oh, cool. I've seen this win, or even a Sir Conrad win. Like people are so over Sir Conrad winning.
Right.
And you're like, well, that's just how it's supposed to be played.
It's just how black wins. And that's part of playing the color, right? Is accepting your role as like, I'm trading everything for power. I'm the one that the table's going to try and chase down, and I'm going to play that way.
Yep.
And if you don't like playing that way, then black is very tricky for you to play.
Yeah.
Which is why I struggle with it so much, is because like I tend to be a sneakier player.
Yeah.
I want to be a second or third place player.
Yeah.
And black requires me to be a first place player to drive the fastest at the beginning. Like I want to pass them in the end, you know?
Yeah.
Not like
You don't want to be in the first.
I don't want to be like
F1?
Yeah, not exactly. I don't want to be chased. I don't want to get blue shelled, you know?
Yeah.
It's a Mario Kart reference. And that's a lot. That's like the bargain that black makes.
Yeah.
And you have to have ways to be able to handle being interacted with, especially when it comes to stuff like graveyard hate.
Yes, you will get Bajuka Bogged, I will tell you. And chances are people are playing that black card specifically just to do that to other players.
Just for you. Like you're the one using your graveyard.
Yeah. You're like, oh, you're using your graveyard? Well, people will even tutor to find
Yeah,
it,
they have
depending
to.
on the game. So you have to be ready to be the quote bad guy and figure out how mentally you're going to deal with that at the table and how you're going to interact with your friends. Or if it's a brand new player group, it's even more, that dynamic is a lot harder to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to be able to protect yourself against that kind of thing. And black isn't really very good about it at all. I think like you have to lean on stuff like white, which gives you ways that give you hexproof, where they cannot target you with a Bajuka Bog, or you have to play a little bit more conservatively, knowing that your playgroup will probably have a Bajuka Bog or some kind of big graveyard exile effect, and be like, you know what, I'm not going to mill 30 cards right now. I'm going to mill like 15, and I'm going to get good value out of those 15, and then I'll mill another 15. And so you don't get blown out by these interactive pieces that your playgroup is going to try to find and is going to use against you because you're the problem and you're clearly the problem.
Obviously. I think that's why white and black black goes well with everything. Let's be real. It's so good with everything. But white fulfills a very specific role with black. And I think that's why when a lot of people tend to play or choose to play black, they play black with white because it fills immediately and directly the failings of black. Right.
It gives you help in that life gain category to make sure that when you're paying all this life, you're not dropping to 15 early and putting yourself in a dangerous position. It gives you a little bit of that board protection, a little bit of that stack interaction to balance things out. I would caution you, if you're playing black, to recognize that you're the problem and they know you're the problem. And you have to revel in that and be like, I'm the problem, chase me.
Hello, you can catch me.
Yeah.
I'm so fast.
Like, be a little cautious, watch your life total, don't go crazy, recognize that they're going to try and attack you because you're using your life as a resource. And maybe don't run so far out in front where everyone's like, because you're not necessarily ready for it.
Live a little dangerously, but also sometimes there are those positions where people are so scared at the table, they will shut you down from the jump.
Yeah.
So also be ready to have that happen, because it's happened to me many times.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you mentioned that's really interesting to me, is like, how do you prepare emotionally to be that player? Because that's not super easy.
No. For me personally, I don't emotionally invest in it. I try not to emotionally invest in it. I'm like, it's just a fun game. I'm here having a good time. Like, you know, it stinks to not do the thing that you came to do, no matter what color you're playing.
Yeah.
But you just got to go, okay, well, it was fast enough. I'll play another game.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not being so emotionally invested in it. I know that's easier said than done, because sometimes you're like, oh, I worked so hard, or I gave up this thing to play this group, you know, today. And, you know, it just, not every day's your day. Magic is, for me, you know, 90% losing. So I always tell that to new players. It's like, get ready to lose. You're going to lose a lot, and you're going to learn every time you lose. But like, when you're sitting at that table and you're like, I'm going to bring out my mono black deck today. And you're like, you have to go, like, not convince yourself, but you're like, this is who I am today.
Yep.
And I'm okay with that.
I'm going to play my game.
And I'm going to play my game.
I'm going to hit the gas.
Yeah. And if I crash, cool. I'm gonna.
I went really fast.
I went really fast. I had a good time, and maybe I'm gonna get in a different car, and maybe I'm gonna play a different deck next time.
Right.
And it's just trying, your best not to be emotionally attached to it. And
yeah. It's tough. That's the most interesting thing about Black for me is that it's so good at everything. It's really, really powerful. Everybody knows it's really powerful, and it's sort of cross to bear.
Yes.
That's the most difficult thing about playing Black is understanding like when to hit the gas, when to hit the brake, when to protect your life total, when to just go for it, and weighing where you are in the pod. Or where your deck is in the pod, because it's really hard to play middle of the pack when you're mono black.
Yeah, no,
like you're just not.
You're either at the front or you are in the back.
Yeah.
And I have been in both of those places, and it feels great and it feels terrible. But you have to kind of know that that's where the limitations of that mono color stand.
All right. We have talked about Black's strengths. We've talked about Black's weakness. We're going to talk about it when it comes with other colors, what Black offers to the rest of the color pie. And we're going to get into winning the game with Black, the best strategies for playing your Black decks after a few words from our sponsors.
Greetings, furballs. I am Nazan, revered bladesmith. As a cat, I care deeply about my grooming, especially trimming my body hair. Now, I'm used to making blades that cut through skin, so when I tried making my own razor, it did not go well. Then I turned to MANSCAPED, the only brand I trust for putting blades near my sensitive pod. They sent me the Performance Package 5.0, and my fur has never looked finer. Their new body hair trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads. Plus, it has dual LED spotlights, 3 length-setting combs, and it's even waterproof. Though being a cat, I'm not going anywhere near water. Yes. This package also comes with the Weed Whacker 2.0 for those pesky ear and nose whiskers. With proper grooming from MANSCAPED, you too can be the cat's meow. And I should know, I'm the cat meow.
Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CommandZone at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code CommandZone. Manscaped. Get all of yourself ready for the holidays. You browsing for some new tech?
Yeah, I'm building Tiamat and ARCHIDEKT. Ooh, how about Zergo and Ojutai?
Did you just drag and drop that card image directly into your deck?
Yep, with ARCHIDEKT, you can drag and drop card images from EDH, Rec, or Scryfall directly into the deck list. No typing required.
That is so cool.
Ooh, okay, check this out. I'm gonna drag and drop Dragon Storm into the deck, and then boom, I'm gonna drop a bunch of dragons on the battlefield.
A 9-drop, huh? Seems ambitious.
It was just for the pun. ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about playing Black in Commander. It's a ton of fun. It's powerful. And we've been talking a lot about mono Black and what it is as its own color. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I want to talk about it as like a primary color and what it means, because when you're playing it.
Yeah.
So Black is a mono color. Like if it's your only color, you're in great shape. Like we said, you can just do everything, right? But you do have to be aware of what you're paying. You're paying a lot of life. Mm-hmm. You don't have interaction for certain things. So what do you do to prepare for those downsides when you're playing mono Black?
Well, when you're playing mono Black, I think you're looking at outside resources like equipments, things that don't necessarily change the color devotion that you're already establishing, at least for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing I think when I'm playing mono Black is like, okay, I'm going to be paying a lot of life. I'm going to need some life gain.
Yep.
And when I'm building mono Black, I'm prepared to pay life, and I'm prepared to balance that life gain with or life loss with life gain. So I know if I'm playing mono Black, I'm packing my life gain, and I'm definitely focused on that devotion. I love playing cards in mono Black that have multiple Black pips that make my Nykthos stronger.
Yes.
That make like
your
the Gary stronger.
Yeah, and being able to use the limited ramp that you do have and big payoffs with it, like your Dark Ritual. You're like, got it right now. Here we go. Let's go.
I also like playing permanence, right? Because that really, it's where Black is strongest. It can reanimate creatures. It uses that devotion. It moves at sorcery speed a lot of the time. So you just, if you have a powerful permanent, get it on the board
immediately.
It's like, it that's not as much of a downside as when you're like playing blue, where you want to move a little bit trickier, a little bit looser. Black is like, I'm casting stuff at sorcery speed. I'm doing it right now. I'm using all of my Cabal Coffers mana. So it being a permanent isn't that much of a downside.
No, it's not.
And then finally, I think you need to know that your deck is good at recovering.
So good.
Yeah.
Because mechanically it's built in to be able to bring things back. There's a lot of recursion in it. So you have, I don't even want to be like willy-nilly, but you can willy-nilly like get things around, or a mass board wipe. You're like, okay, that's cool. You know, I'll come back. I think that's why one of my favorite commanders is Abomination of Llanowar, because you're like, oh, cool. Stuff in my graveyard. Amazing.
Yeah.
Clear my whole board. Don't worry. I'll bring it all back.
That just makes her bigger.
Yeah, it's just great.
Them bigger. There's a lot of elves in that elf ball. It's, I think that's like a great point. If you have a board and you have a board wipe and it will hurt your opponents, cast it.
Yeah.
You'll get your stuff back. Like, you will be prepared for that situation because you're playing a deck that plays in its graveyard. So if it'll mess up your other opponents, even if it hurts you a little bit, go nuts.
That's the point of black.
Yeah.
Black is like, well, it kind of hurts you, kind of hurts me in a different way, but like, I'll be okay.
Yeah. All right, so that's black as a monocolor, the way of thinking about it. Let's talk about black as your second color and what you're supposed to do with that second color.
So we said black doesn't have a lot of weaknesses.
Right.
But when you're playing long-term in a huge game that has a lot of powerful colors in it, you're like, well, sometimes it could be a little scary out there. So you're pairing it up with things that really help you. Like you're pairing it up with white. Got a ton of life gain. You're pairing it up with green. You're getting a ton of ramp. Maybe you're getting some more creatures to sacrifice, producing a lot of tokens so you can sack them. You're really taking all of the low parts of what black is, all of them, there's not that many, but you're taking the ones that are there and you're bumping them up to be even more powerful.
Right. I mean, like when you play white, you add this life gain that we've talked about, but you also add interaction for other permanents. Yes. Like you have your Swords to Plowshares, which are super, super efficient. But you also have just interaction for enchantments. And you can lean on white for that. Like, you don't have to use Feed the Swarm anymore because you have white. And maybe you've got more efficient life gain in white, so you can use white for that. Use it to protect your board.
Yes.
White has hexproof and general protection. It's got keywords to really shore up some of the weakness black has in combat. Like, you just have to know these things. So you're like, okay, white's good at this, we'll go to white for that. And black's good at this, we'll go to black for that.
Yeah.
Blue offers something totally different.
Yeah.
Stack interaction is the main thing.
Absolutely. It allows you to be that tricksy. I personally see more or my brain sees rogues more in blue black.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're like, oh, they're tricksy, they're working behind the scenes, they're very like, ooh, I don't know, I speak with words, sounds a lot. But they're really kind of stack interaction. Card draw without the downfall of paying life, you know, counter spells. We already talked about that. Black doesn't have a ton of counter spells, so being active at the table.
It offers that protection from your opponent's win cons, and it also offers protection for your win cons. So that being able to use blue to, make yourself a little bit more flexible, a little bit more tricksy, so you're not doing the mono black thing is like, I'm the problem. Right now I am. Blue says like, I might be the problem. It could be. You don't know. Maybe.
It's like if you're, if mono black is just driving a car crazy willy-nilly, I feel like blue black is like putting a seatbelt on.
Yeah, I love that.
You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're still going to drive really fast.
Yeah.
But we've got a little bit of protection. A little bit of safety.
a little bit of safety, please. Research shows that seatbelts save a lot of lives.
So it's kind of like putting a seatbelt on our F1 racer.
I love that. When you add green, what does green add to the black strategy?
Oh, man. Green adds so much. I could talk about it for days.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, green adds creatures. It adds hexproof. It adds ramp, which is going to allow you to play some of maybe those bigger cards that you don't are like, oh, I'm not going to pay 5 mana for that. But when you're playing it with green, you might just pay that 5 mana because you have access to it. It also is non-creature removal. So huge.
Green offers removal for exactly the stuff you struggle with.
Yes.
It's great at interacting with artifacts. It's great at interacting with enchantments. And then it gives you huge creatures to reanimate. Like black has big demons and some dragons and stuff, but green also just has like 5 drops that are great and 6 drops that are great. You don't have to go all the way to 9 mana to get like really powerful creatures when you add green.
And then when you're playing them together, sure, you get out, maybe you become the problem. They're like, okay, I'm going to get rid of that. And you're like, ha ha ha, I'm going to bring it back again. And you're like, what? And you're like, and again, and again, and again. And they're like, okay, now I've had enough. I'm going to get rid of your whole graveyard.
Like, aw.
Well,
I'm hexproof.
Yeah. Fog.
So red is really fun to add.
Oh,
to
it's
black.
so spicy.
Red adds mania, right?
Yes.
It makes your aggressive strategy even more aggressive.
Yes.
It like I like that red has is good at a lot of the things that black is good at, except it adds like artifact removal, which is helpful. Yeah, but it also adds more mana acceleration and more little creatures and more
pinging.
Damage.
Oh, it's so great. So if I'm keeping with the car analogies, so F1 mono black, Dimir seatbelt, Rakdos, you're driving a flaming clown car.
Yeah.
That is what is like in my brain of like, all right, I'm going to play red black today. And I'm getting in the clown car and I'm bringing them all with me.
And we're hitting gas. And what is the green one? We didn't do a green car analogy.
Gosh, I mean, it's cool.
Is it just like outdoor tires? It's like off-road tires?
Oh, yeah. You're driving you're driving a monster truck.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm keeping with the car analogies. You're driving a monster truck when you're playing Golgari.
But fast.
Oh, they go really fast.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. You're not doing fewer flips. I guess black offers flips.
Yeah. Black is flips.
Black is flips.
And I mean, for me, Orzhov, you're driving a boat. You're in a boat. You're in a boat.
I love that. Yeah, I think red really amplifies black's plan rather than shoring up any holes. Like, yes, it adds artifact interaction, but the fact that it's just like, you're doing that? Let's do that.
Yeah, it's like
red is along for the ride.
It's that one friend that always says yes to your crazy like stuff.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about black as a splash color. This is like you're playing 3 colors and black is less than a third of your deck or a third of your deck.
I know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, Jund is probably red, black, green is probably one of my favorite colorways to play besides...
Right.
Oh, it's all my favorite. Let's be. But playing it as a splash, you're specifically choosing it for the best thing that it's at.
Right.
And I think that's what allows 3 colors to shine.
Right. That's all of the cards that we talked about in the first part of this episode. This is where black is at 10. Its tutors are at 10. Its creature removal, 10. Reanimation effects, of course. Yep. Black does it best, and that's what it should be included for. You don't want to dip into like some of black's like shore up cards. Like you don't play darkness in 3 colors. No. You don't play feed the swarm in 3 colors because your other colors can do those things better. Yeah. So you want to make sure that maybe you're not running all of the pay life cards because you've got like reds looting or you've got blues straight up card draw. Black is also offers drain effects like win cons for aristocrat type stuff like your Blood Artist and Zulaport. No other color does that quite as well as black does.
It's almost like you take if you were to like go find like 10 most iconic black cards, chances are when you're playing 3 colors, you're probably playing every single one of those.
Those are the ones that you dip into for black for sure. Of course, if you're playing multiple colors, you're not just playing mono black cards. Now we get to dip into the gold cards.
We love them.
So I want to talk about like what happens in a card mechanically when you add black to another color. So we've talked about it in deck building, but they modify each other in really interesting ways once they start showing up on cards together. And we're going to talk about black, white first. This is Orzhov. This first one is amazing, and it used to be a huge staple.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what was Orzhov? No. Merciless Eviction. It is 4 and a white black. It is a sorcery. Choose 1. Exile all artifacts. Very white.
Yeah.
Exile all creatures.
Either.
It could be white or black.
Yep.
Exile all enchantments. Very white.
That's certainly white.
Exile all planeswalkers.
That's definitely black. So Merciless Eviction gives you that complete removal. Black-white is known for being able to handle anything, and it does like drain and gain really well. But this one is just embodies how good both the colors are at saying like getting rid of stuff. Yeah, you're gone.
You're like, I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna take it all the way down. And I think they play on that with the way that they name the cards too, like Damnation. You're like, boom. And this looks like Damnation mixed with, like, at least the art on it looks like Damnation mixed with something else.
With like Wrath of God,
with Wrath of God, which
it's
I
like
think
an eclipse. It's cool.
You see it. It's there.
It's on the screen, unless you're in the podcast. And then just imagine an eclipse. You got it.
You got it.
This next thing is that we've been talking about is the counterplay of black and white is the life gain with the life drain. Kambal, Consul of Allocation, I think is such a clear black-white card. This is a legendary human advisor. He's a 2/3 that says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life.
There are so many Orzhov cards that say you gain life, they lose life, or you lose life, you gain life. It is just like, when you see black and white together, that is the epitome of what like my brain is like, yep, you get them both.
And this kind of like taxing effect, this like little bit of like draining thing is coming largely from white, but the fact that it comes on kind of a greedy, manipulative human is like a lot of the time why you see when you see black white, it is because the humans are a little bit, they delved too deep. They've taken a little bit too much.
Blown too close to the sun.
Exactly. So I love Kambal for an Orzhov flavor.
Primeval's Glorious Rebirth is also kind of along those lines. So it's expensive, 5, a white and a black. It's a legendary sorcery. Return all legendary permanent cards from your graveyard to the battlefield.
So powerful.
So powerful, which is why it's so expensive. But I think if you break it up into 2 pieces, legendary, very white, graveyard, very black, put it together, you have black and white in a nutshell.
And white also adds all the other permanents. Like white is good at returning just kind of stuff from the graveyard. Black is really good at returning creatures. So the fact is you get like the whole like creature. White is often limited to like small things that it brings back. Black can bring back anything. So it combines those 2 things into this complete reanimation package that can get anything. And it feels it's like the power of white and black combined.
It takes both of the best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds. That's why gold cards are so fun. So when you add black with green, you add something completely different.
Yep. So iconic Assassin's Trophy. I mean, it's a black and a green instant, destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle.
Yeah. This is the efficiency of black's removal with the wide array of greens removal, where you can hit the non-creature and the creature permanents. And you give them a land for their trouble, which
You're
I suppose
I'm so sorry. It's so nice of me because I added green. Here you go.
Black and green are really like the recycling colors, and really it's kind of like, we'll trade that. We'll turn that into mulch.
We're gonna compost today.
I think where like black green removal I think is really, really strong.
Yeah.
And the efficiency of Assassin's Trophy is really where the black shines. One of the most fun black green cards in Magic.
History?
Yeah, is Deathrite Shaman.
I feel like it's getting a rebirth.
It's coming back. The people are like, if it gets unbanned in Modern, it'll save the day. Which I don't know if that's true. I don't know Modern enough. But Deathrite Shaman's awesome. It's a black and a green hybrid for an elf shaman. It's a 1/2 with 3 activated abilities. He taps to exile target land from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It also says black, tap, exile target instant or sorcery from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. And then green, tap, exile target creature from a graveyard. You gain 2 life. So every single one of these abilities is a little bit of black and a little bit of green.
Yeah, I feel like the first one is both, right?
Yep.
The second one, clearly black because you're paying black for it. And then the last one, green. It's doing the green thing. And it's all together on 1 card for 1 mana.
It's ridiculous.
It's great.
The flexibility of Deathrite Shaman, its interaction, and it furthers your plan. And it does that black-green thing where it's like I turn garbage into value. I interact with your graveyard and I give you something for it. It's trading things that feels very like the life and death that Golgari offers.
Yeah, Witherbloom, if you will, because I think that's their whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of
Witherbloom.
Culling Ritual. It was I talked about it in ad nauseum in another episode forever ago. It's 2, a black and a green. It is sorcery. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Add black or green for each permanent destroyed this way.
Awesome.
An absolute bomb. Like, gosh, it's so good.
This is exactly the energy that we were talking about before. Taking all of the little things, like the little bits of little creatures, and turning them
Disposable
into
stuff.
Pure power, which is in this case is mana. And it's use it right now.
You don't get to hold on to that.
I think the green part of it is that it just doesn't hit all creatures. But the black part of it is just the trading everybody's things for more power is so clear.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about putting on your seatbelt. Let's talk about Dimir. When you combine blue and black on a card, what does that look like?
Well, the first one's got to be Baleful Strix.
Right? It's so iconic.
Oh, God. It's so, and you see it and you want to remove it immediately. It is a blue and a black. It is a artifact creature bird, flying, death touch. When Baleful Strix enters the battlefield, draw a card. It's a 1/1. Okay. It's flying. That's pretty blue.
Yeah.
I mean, it is also kind of black. Death touch, notably
Definitely
black.
Yeah.
Enters the battlefield, draw a card.
Could be
Could be
either,
blue,
but
could be black.
Honestly, this is very black. There aren't a lot of creatures like blue creatures that are this efficient that enter and draw. The fact that you don't lose any life, that's where
the blue part.
That's where blue comes from. If this ETV drained you for 1 and you drew a card, then it really feels black. But also the fact that it's an artifact comes into like the blue sort of mechanical thing. Like we've taken something organic and made it into a machine is where blue and black really become
What
cool.
are you, Phyrexian now?
Apparently. No. This next one's Notion Thief. 2 blue and a black for a human rogue. It has flash, very blue. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one, they would draw on each of their draw steps. Instead, that player skips that draw and you draw it.
Very black.
It's so I think this card is so blue-black. Like you
100%.
feel like the sneakiness and the manipulation.
Yeah.
That Dimir is so well known for.
That's what they do. It's what they live for.
Yeah. And if it's like black is getting a little bit more flash lately, but the fact that you can like catch them in a trap is like, I was smarter than you.
I gotcha. And that's very blue black. You're like, oh, I'm using that big old noggin.
Yeah.
Got my seatbelt on. I'm ready for anything.
This next card is one of my favorite Dimir cards. It's Thief of Sanity. It's 1 in a blue and a black for a 2/2 flying specter. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library. Exile one of them face down. You may put the rest into their graveyard. Then put the rest into their graveyard. Excuse me. You may look at and cast the card for as long as it remains exiled. And you may spend mana of any type as though it were to cast that spell. So this is a very strongly black card.
Yes.
But the fact that you get to like it's a combat damage feels like more of the blue thing. Like black has a lot of ETB creatures that do this, but the fact that this is a combat damage and you get a little bit of information and you get to use it for your own wills.
Spy.
Yeah, it does. It feels really smart and really like manipulative, which is cool.
That's just Dimir in a nutshell.
And it just steals your sanity.
We're talking about you, Krim.
All right, it's the flaming
clown
car. We're going to talk about Rakdos. What happens when you add red and black together?
Chaos. Damage. Insanity. Murder. With a smile. Murder with a smile. Speaking of clown cars, literally probably one of my favorite cards in red black, Mayhem Devil. And why I use the clown car thing, he's driving a unicycle with flaming fireballs. And that's exactly what it does as a card. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. It's chaotic. You can hit anything. You know, the sacrifices a permanent. Cool. Very black. Deals damage to any target. Very red. So you're like, boom. Love it. Also, it's 1 a black and a red.
This card's awesome, and it shows like purely what red and black want to do, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm going to impact the game. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And it like, it just takes over the game in a way that feels very like, pew, 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 pew.
It's like, and so I came out blasting.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I came out blasting on a magic card. The next one I want to talk about is Chainer, Nightmare Adept. It's 2 black red for a human minion. Perfect. 3, it's a 3/2. It has an activated ability that says discard a card, : you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn, activate only once each turn, and whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if you didn't cast it from your hand, it gains a haste. So this is reanimation from black. You're trading a card in your hand for the ability to cast a creature, and then red says, go
now.
Chainer is so much fun and gives you the energy that black is, where it's just like, this, now, go, like, get out of here. It's aggressive and it's like splashy, and you're still paying mana for it.
Yes.
But the ability to cast it out of your graveyard is very Chainer.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to open the gate to the underworld and everything is going to come sprinting out of it.
It is your enable. Like, red is your enabler when you're playing red and black. You're like, oh, that crazy thing you told me you want to do? Well, I think you should do it.
Do it a little
right
now. Here's some caffeine.
Here we go. So another card is Last One Standing. It's 1, a black and a red. It's a sorcery. Choose a creature at random, then destroy the rest. Very chaotic.
I had to mention this one because I feel like very few cards really encompass Rakdos as well. It's just like everything is gonna die except one of you.
Yeah.
Which is it?
Surprise!
Like, it could hurt you. It could hurt nobody. It could be just fine. It's 3 mana, so you're using efficiency for it to be work a little less than you maybe think it should.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool to see black paired with everything. I play black with everything. It's fun. Have a good time. Lean into your strengths.
Yeah. And like, look at those gold cards. And if you have an idea for a deck and that like it has a specific tone, learning to recognize what colors you should be looking at is really important. If you're like, I want to play something kind of instant speed and based on like, I want to have a lot of things, but I don't really want to attack with them. You start to be like, okay, so a little bit of blue, you probably want black so you can do these like aristocrat things. It helps you become a better deck builder the more familiar with each color you are. And honestly, I think building monocolored is a great way to become a better deck builder overall.
Yeah.
Because you know intimately what the color is good at, and you know intimately what the color is bad at.
Yeah.
And that helps a long way. It's like painters, you do color studies, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Otherwise, you don't understand how to paint fully.
In the same way of like figure studies, you learn how to paint a person, and then you get better at proportions and all this other stuff. So it's really, really, it behooves you as a Magic player to step outside of your comfort zone, learn a new color, stick with just the color, and figure it out from there. Like, that's how I ended up with my mono blue deck. I was like, I don't really play a lot of blue, but I play against a lot of blue. So maybe I need to get in the mindset of what a blue player is.
Yeah.
So that's how I came out with my mono blue deck. And I don't play it very often.
But it's great.
It's great. But everybody's like, oh, Thassa's Oracle. And I'm like, yep, but that's the way it's supposed to go. So
that's blue.
I did it.
I know you guys are like, blah, 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 learning. How do I win? How do I win with my black deck? Well, good thing that you're here, because black is great at winning.
So good.
Ugh, does black have the power to close out a commander game where like red struggles with like efficiency, like all of its cards are designed for 1v1, so it kind of is too small potatoes. Black thinks big. And it is great at ending commander games, because if you want to drain everybody for 80 life, black is like,
howdy.
So do I.
You can do it too.
That is the first win con that I think of when I think of mono black, is these massive drain effects.
Yeah. Like Torment of Hailfire.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's a more accurate name that you could have named a card of like how to end a game in black style. Torment of Hailfire, which we talked about earlier. It's just repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So it's like, you think you're going to survive this? No. Anything you think you could do, I'm stopping you. No. It's gone.
Because you're combining it with black's massive mana production, right? So you're taking cards like Exsanguinate, which we've mentioned, Torment of Hailfire, and you're saying, I can make 30 mana. How do I win the game with that? So you're converting all of the Cabal Coffers mana and the Urborg and the Cabal Stronghold and the Crypt of Agadeem, and you're saying like, okay, I have a lot of mana. How do I win? And this says, you got a lot of mana?
Oh boy, howdy.
I got a place to put it. And that's in X. We mentioned it earlier, but Culling
Culling Ritual.
It's a great place to make a lot of mana.
Oh, make a lot of mana, spend a lot of mana. That's and a lot of the times late game people are recovering. They've, have a bunch of tokens. They're, figuring out where they're going with it, how they're recovering. And you're like, oh, you have just made a lot of tiny little things.
Kapow!
Shablam! Not anymore. They're dead. I'm in. I'm the boss. I'm winning.
Exsanguinate. So if you're trying to win with big drain effects, you definitely want big mana effects. If you're trying to win with like Grey Merchant of Asphodel type drain effects that are attached to creatures, or like Kakusho the Evening Star that says when it dies, each opponent loses 5, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Or maybe a Massacre Worm. When it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. So those are like ETBs and dies triggers that drain your opponents out. Well, those will win you the game, but they'll especially win the game if you combine it with sack outlets and reanimation effects.
Which is what black is made to do.
Yeah. So we've talked about it before. It's reanimate and animate dead, and anything that says sacrifice a creature. Truly, and village rights. We've mentioned it already.
Plague Crafter. We talked about Plague Crafter.
It's a great sack outlet for this kind of thing.
Murderous Rider.
Murderous Rider doesn't have a sack outlet on it.
No, but you kill something.
You could kill it with your Murderous Rider. That's true. That's a sack outlet.
But you kill it.
That's such a black mindset.
Oh, well, I told you.
Well, I have a spell. I kill this, and then I reanimate and I win. And you're like, yeah, no, you're right.
That checks out.
That doesn't.
You got to think outside the box
Absolutely.
here.
I like a Phyrexian Tower in black decks. That's a land that sacrifices a creature to add to black. Perfect for anything like this. If you want to add a sack outlet plus a reanimation effect, try Dread Return. It's 2 black for a sorcery. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. That seems overcosted. Keep reading. Flashback. Sacrifice 3 creatures. No mana cost.
Nothing.
You just sacrifice 3 creatures and reanimate a creature in your graveyard, and it's probably Kakusho. That seems good.
Yeah, like I said, you killed that? Great. I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to bring it back again, and I'm going to bring it back again, and I'm going to bring it back again,
dead.
and now you're dead. Oh, so sorry. I'm the bad guy.
Similar to that, we've talked about those small drain effects, the Blood Artists, the Zulaport Cutthroats of the world. Well, those will win the game, but you have to combine them with tokens. You've got to make a ton of stuff. But like the interesting thing about this is they've added some variety to like how black drains.
Yes.
Like they put in some stuff like Nadir's Nightblade, which cares about whenever any token. Could be an artifact, could be an enchantment.
Yep. Maybe you have a bunch of treasures or things like that, and you're like, well, it doesn't matter as long as it's some form of tokens.
And it dies.
Probably a food token.
Disciple of the Vault says whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may have target opponent lose 1 life. And of course, your best friend.
My guy, my pal, my lad, my good time boy, Sir Conrad the Grim. I think we're pretty familiar with him. At least I am. It's 3 of black. Whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent, and then you can pay 1 in a black, and each player mills a card.
Yep.
It's doing everything a mono black player wants to do. It's okay, cool. Stuff goes in my graveyard. Cool. I'm going to ping you. It's coming out of my graveyard. It's going to ping you. And it's got it built on the card.
Yeah. And then the only thing that's left to do with those cards is just make a lot of stuff. Like make a ton of treasure tokens with a Pitiless Plunderer. Make a ton of creatures with an Abhorrent Overlord. Even a Plague of Vermin. This card is so much fun to cast. 6 and a blacks for a sorcery. Starting with you, each player may pay any amount of life. Repeat this process until no one pays. Each player puts a 1/1 black rat creature token into play for each 1 life they paid this way. I mean, that, like, you're trading life for creatures and then you're sacking them to drain everybody. It's the perfect combination of, like, what black strengths are.
Chances are you, as the black player, will pay the most life.
Yeah.
You will 100% pay the most life.
Go to 1. I've seen it happen. The next...
You like this one.
I do. The next category, the way that black wins is with mass reanimation effects. We've talked about Living Death. We've talked about Rise of the Dark Realms. There's a new one that's Lich Knight's Conquest. 4 and a black, sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens. Return that many creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is just to overwhelm your opponents with bodies.
I mean, it's really great though, because it's artifacts, enchantments, or tokens.
Yeah. Trade everything for
yeah.
your graveyard. Sack all your signets. Go big.
I mean, that's a very like mono black way of thinking, and I like it. See, we're gonna make a mono black player out of you yet.
This you combine with a lot of self-mill. And then, so your deck is trying to put a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, and then you cast a big Living Death, or you cast a big Lich Knight's Conquest, and now you have way more creatures than your opponents can handle.
And then they never saw it. Well, they probably did see it coming, but you're still gonna win.
Yep. It's too late. You have them already. There's one final category of ways that black wins well, and that's just...
Can I say
cool, do it.
Combos. I'm sorry. I had to.
Combo. Yeah, but there's a lot of really powerful mono black combos in Commander. The most famous of all, of course, is Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Or hell?
Both.
Could be.
It's whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life is one of them. And then the other one says, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Which, as you can imagine, goes round and round and round until everyone's dead.
Except for you.
You've got a lot of life. This also combines with Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose.
I have experience with him, but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
I love him. I love it as a card, as a black player. I'm like, this is what I want to see.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. And then I just didn't.
These combos are like, black is really good at playing combo because it has the tutors. So you can go find the other piece if you have one.
Yeah.
So you see it a lot in mono black decks. Something like a Blood Chief Ascension, which says whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Blood Chief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. So whenever a card hits a graveyard from anywhere, that's whenever they cast an instant or sorcery. That's whenever they get milled. That's whenever they discard a card or a card dies.
Crack a token. Anything.
It's very, very powerful drain effect that's repeatable, but it's infinite usually when you combine it with something like Mindcrank. It is infinite always. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player mills that many cards. So you're like, you lose 2, you mill 2, you lose 2 because you lose 4 because you milled 2. Now you mill 4. Now you lose 8 because you milled, and you mill out all of your opponents with those. It's very cheap combo, very, very powerful.
I'm gonna let you tell them about this combo because I had to do the other one.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, so Leyline of the Void is a enchantment that says if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. It's a rest in peace type effect. But you can infinitely mill all your opponents, one opponent, with a Helm of Obedience that says target opponent mills a card, then repeats this process until a creature card or X cards have been put into their graveyard this way, whichever comes first. If one or more creature cards were put into the graveyard this way, sacrifice Helm of Obedience and put one of them onto the battlefield under your control. X can't be 0. None of that matters at the end because they will never hit the graveyard. So because Leyline of the Void is exiling cards as they go to the graveyard, Helm of Obedience is like, wait, there's no creature cards coming to the graveyard.
Oh, it's fine.
And then they run out of library.
And that's how you win.
Boop.
Our last one we have here is Phyrexian Altar. Obviously, a staple in a lot of black decks. Sacrifice a creature. Boom. That's it. Add 1 mana of any color. We love it. You can just do it. You don't have to pay anything besides for the mana cost of the card. And that goes with Gravecrawler, which is a single black creature, is a zombie. Gravecrawler can't block. You may cast Gravecrawler from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie.
So if you have a Phyrexian Altar and a Gravecrawler and any zombie,
literally anything,
you can cast a Gravecrawler to sack a Gravecrawler to cast a Gravecrawler to sack a Gravecrawler to cast one. And you usually win the game with a Blood Artist type effect or a Zulaport Cutthroat, one of those tiny 1,000 cuts things. So it gives you infinite dies, infinite ETBs.
It's so good.
Really, really powerful.
It can be very complicated. So when you are thinking about playing a deck like this or a combo that has a lot of triggered abilities, one, you better be paying attention because you can miss one and one matters. But you really have to pay attention and you're like, okay, so this comes back and it does this and this and this and this. And I love stuff. I think that's why I love my Corvold deck because I'm like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be this and this and this and this. And I'm like, whoa, I feel like a beautiful mind and it makes me feel really, really smart and powerful and I love it.
That's the thing about black is it always leaves you with options because you can always like pay a little bit of life to instead of a little bit of mana. Or you can, so there always feels like there's infinite lines that you can follow. Like you're using your graveyard, you're using your hand, you're using your library, you're using your life total. Everything is sort of at your disposal in order to gain power, which is what black is all about. You can really, really do some powerful things in black or adding black to any of the other colors. Before we go, any advice for black players, for like people who are trying to become, they're burgeoning black mages?
Oh, read the fine print. I'm just kidding.
Talk to your demon about
if you or your friend have been affected by, I'm just kidding. Do the thing that your deck wants to do. Do not don't be so calculated. Don't be so reserved. The way that black is supposed to be played is like that, especially when you're playing mono black. Do you feel like maybe you've missed opportunities when you're playing mono black because you just didn't go far enough?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all the time where like, oh, I could have drawn more cards, but I got worried about my life total. Or I reanimated a life gain piece where I should have just reanimated like a big creature that could have hit a little bit harder. You know, I think I tend to play. I play white. I play small incremental magic a lot of the time, and I like using the graveyard and I like doing a lot of things that black does hypothetically, but when it comes down to it, I struggle to be the big bad, to run out as fast as I need to run out, to make 30 mana because I often don't want to be the target. And that's not how you play black. Like you need to
grab life by the horns and you need to go in there and you need to not be afraid to lose things or lose the game. Honestly, because the whole part of it is you're getting a little bit more value by being risky, by using life, by not paying mana. Okay, it's going to go to the graveyard. Who cares? You can bring it back. All right. Well, look at it as value. You made them use removal on this thing, which you don't necessarily need right now, but you can bring it back later. You have to go for it. And guess what? If you lose the game, you can just play another one. Okay. It's no big deal.
You didn't lose
just
life.
The game. You're still there and you can play another one. You really just have to go for it. When you're playing black, do the thing that it's supposed to do. You're not going to get Michael Jordan for a basketball game because you want to lose the game. You want to do it. So you, as the mono black player, you're there to win the game. That is what it is there for. Whatever that means to you, do it.
Yeah, you don't play mono black to mess around. And it's just like, I'm here, I'm chasing the win. If you don't want the win, it's a frustrating color to play because you're like, oh, I don't want to overwhelm anybody. Overwhelm them. That's what it's designed to do. Black overpowers you.
You are an apex predator.
Get them.
You must get them. That is what you think of yourself as a shark.
Yeah.
You are the shark at the table.
Would a shark not eat a guy?
Probably.
Yeah, it often doesn't. Statistically, it doesn't really eat guys. It cares more about seals.
I'm saying, you're always going to eat the smaller fish when you're a shark. So go eat the smaller fish at the table because that is what you were supposed to do.
Be the shark you were born to be.
Or the monster truck.
To the listeners, black mages, what is your favorite thing about playing black? Did we miss any of the colors pitfalls? Is there anything that you've run into when you're playing black that you're like, I always hate that? What is your favorite tech to shore up those weaknesses and pilot your black decks to victory? What's your favorite black card move that you're like, oh, I have this win con and it's incredible. We want to hear about it.
Let us know below.
And to anybody else who has heard this episode and is like, you know what? It's time. It's time. I'm gonna start playing more black. Go to cardkingdom.com/command. They have a huge selection of magic cards and sealed product, and you can get it all from one place that is professional and has the selection to give you exactly the cards that you want. There's so many cool old border black cards with weird art and like drippy stuff. And you want to get that specific printing, and you can get those at Card Kingdom. Like whenever I'm playing black, black. I'm like, I want the weirdest art. Duh.
It's my
That's
favorite era.
why you play mono black, and I want to get exactly what I'm looking for. Luckily, Card Kingdom has the biggest selection, and I can get all of those cards in one place. Plus, they put them in one safe package, so you're not chasing envelopes for the next 3 to 5 weeks. We trust Card Kingdom when shopping for cards. You should too. Go to cardkingdom.com/command. And once those cards are in your hand, you're going to need to protect them. Go to ultrapro.com/command to get all of your finest Black Mage accessories. Get skulls on stuff. Whenever I'm building a deck, I want the aesthetics to be really strong. I want black sleeves. I want like the right printings. And I want the deck box to match.
You want everybody to know that you are a mono black player at the table, and everything that you're putting on this table will tell them that.
And you can get high quality Magic accessories from Ultra Pro, and you can get them at cheap prices if you sign up for their newsletter. They often have fire sales for like 20 to 50% off, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess I need a deck box in every color for my next deck building binge. Again, you can pick up all of those accessories over at ultrapro.com/command. Oh, okay. We've talked about a lot of Magic cards, mostly black ones.
I love it.
We're going to take a moment to talk about some stuff outside the world of Magic. What do you got for us, lady?
Me.
What have you been up to?
Well, I'm off doing my own thing. I'm streaming again. I'm working on YouTube content about mental health and creativity. And so, yeah, I've just been streaming. I stream Monday through Wednesday every week. I've been playing a lot of The Sims, as you all know. I used to build the sets here at the Command Zone. And I thought, what better way to use my skills than to build imaginary things in an imaginary universe? So I've been doing that. And I started a book club. It's called Shelf Indulgence. I think it's a great name. It's just, I'm biased. We read a new book every month because I'm really avid on learning. And so we're currently reading a really cool, fun horror mystery book.
What's the book?
The Helm of Midnight by Marina Lostetter. And we've got a bunch of people in there, and we're talking about what's going on in the book, and we're keeping up with each other. And it's been a really cool, creative way to like connect with other people.
Yeah.
I've just... Right now in my life, I'm taking care of my brain and my body, and I think it's really important that us as Magic players, we can dive so deep into something, head down, not looking at anything else, and taking a step back and taking care of ourselves and taking a break from certain things really lets you come back with the love and passion that you always had for that specific thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of taking a little break and, sharing my knowledge and hoping and telling all of my friends and people that follow me to learn something new. Yeah. I'm a big, one of the things I kind of live by is I pick something that I'm going to learn every year. Last year was snowboarding. I learned how to snowboard. Yep. This year, I'm really focused on learning how to use a hand drum and like new techniques, how to do that. Things that like spark my brain and itch the right spots in there to do that. So you're going to learn something new next year?
Sure, yeah.
You're going to learn how to drive a monster truck?
Probably not. That sounds expensive. I think we talked about this last year, but I haven't done it. I really need to learn how to cook. And
you should.
I really don't do it. And it's like, it has that mental block that you're like, well, I'm bad at it, so don't do it. Yeah. And you're like, but then you're still going to stay bad at it.
Yeah.
And that's so silly. Because then you'll never be good at it. So then you keep this like block in your brain. And I think when you become an adult, you just stop being, you're like, I'm an adult. Why would I need to learn anything else? Read? Why would I need to try something that makes me feel challenged?
Yeah.
And you're like, because you feel better when you do.
You feel so good when you learn how to do it. And it keeps your brain preoccupied and it translates to everything in your life. Learning translates to everything in your life. Okay, you're not great at playing blue. Okay, well, play blue to get better at playing blue, which is going to make you a better player overall. And it translates to everything. Well, learn how to cook, and then maybe you'll learn how to bake.
I've been starting to cook lately, and honestly, it's so nice just to be like, oh, this isn't like some witchcraft. I was always like, oh, it's like a cauldron, and you have to know what goes in it, and it's a pinch and a knuckle, and nobody tells you exactly how much. And they're like, the secret is, it doesn't matter. just put salt in.
Make it good, like make it flavorful.
Yeah. And it's a ton of fun, and it makes it so much more approachable when you just do it and you have the courage to be bad.
Yeah.
Because like, who cares if you're bad at it? Nobody's
good at stuff right away. And I have to tell myself that all the time because I'm an overachiever and I'm like, I can do that. And then I go to do it and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot do this. And then, you keep working at it and you eventually get there where you're mediocre. I actually just said this to a friend of mine of like, well, the way my brain works is I'm going to learn a lot of things mediocrely. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. Yeah. And at some point, at some time, it'll be relevant and I will use it. So I moved from one thing to another. And Josh is always like, how do you know how to do all this stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. One time I thought I might learn how to do it. And
I tried it.
And then here I am.
It might have been relevant at one point.
It's going to be useful, I promise.
Plus, you become a more well-rounded, happy person. Learn something new with Ladee Danger. Let's move to the cleanup step. Thank you to everyone here at the Command Zone who make these episodes possible. Thank you to Damon Lentz, Eric Lem, Megan Yip, Gaurav Galati, Jordan Pridgeon, Jamie Block, Arthur Meadowcroft, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Sam Waldo, Evan Limburger, Katie Cole, Mitch Trafford, Josh Lee Kwai, Jimmy Wong, and, of course, to Ladee Danger for taking the time to talk about black with me.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. It's good to have you back. It was a ton of fun to record. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.